All right, greetings everybody, and welcome to week number 6. That is right, week number 6 of your 9443 class, which is your academic libraries class. As always, I'm your professor, Dr. J.S.K. Austin, and what we are going to do today is a very quick state of the course update. And then what I'm going to do is tell you all a little bit about residencies and fellowships and that sort of thing. So if you want to potentially consider one of those sorts of things as a first professional librarian career job after you finish library school, that is not a bad idea, but you may not know what those things are. So I am going to inform you. And then once I inform you, you will have the knowledge that you need in order to determine whether or not you want to look into residencies as a potential first job out of library school. Now, keep in mind that it is mostly academic libraries that do residencies. You will rarely ever find them in public libraries. You will probably never find them in K-12 libraries. OCLC does a residency. The National Library of Medicine does one. And so there may be some other national libraries that do residencies, but as far as outside of the National Library of Medicine and those sorts of things in OCLC, you'll generally find these in academic libraries, and that's why it is relevant to this academic libraries course. And you will, again, not find these very often in public libraries. In fact, I don't know if there is a residency that is available in public libraries right now at all. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into that first state of the course update. And again, this is going to be very quick because there is not much to say. Really, the only thing that needs to be said is that 2 weeks from Sunday is going to be when your first essay assignment is due. I am going to be checking for proper APA in that first essay assignment. Most everybody did well with their APA in the library website review, so I'm not too worried about that. But again, if you lost some points for your APA in the library website review, or if you're just unsure about your APA, I did do a check-in video about 2 common APA mistakes. I would encourage you all to look that over again if you didn't already, or if you did and you forgot the contents. That was week number 2, 18 minutes unsped up, and of course you can speed it up, okay? But that's really it. Right now you just have discussion boards and a paper that's due 2 weeks from Sunday. So as I said at the beginning of this course is a course that really is more so informational. There's not a whole lot to challenge you on in this course and that sort of thing, but this course is to help you determine whether or not you think that academic libraries are the career field of your choice. But with that said, that is pretty much it for the course update. So let's go ahead and look at residencies and fellowships. Pause. All right, so when we're talking about residency programs, the first thing that I want to do is just kind of talk about myself for a little bit, because that is where I started out. So for those of you who don't know, I don't know if I mentioned this in this class before, but my first job out of library school, I went to library school at North Carolina Central University in Durham, North Carolina, and my first job out of library school was at UNC Greensboro, in Greensboro, North Carolina. And at UNC Greensboro, I was actually their first diversity resident librarian, and I was serving in that role from 2008 to 2010. So what a resident librarian is think of the TV show Scrubs, right? If you remember that TV show Scrubs, the characters in that show were actually Donald Faison and Zach Braff and these people. They were medical residents, okay? So basically they were getting real practical on-the-job experience in order to be full-time medical doctors. And so when you're looking at residency programs and librarianship, it is pretty much the same concept. And I've told people in this field that I started out as a resident librarian, and they were like, okay, so you were living at the library. No, that's not what it was. A residency is, again, a temporary, full-time, temporary, term limited professional job that gives you professional on-the-job experience and makes you competitive for your next position, which will hopefully be a permanent position and not a term limited position. So a lot of people who go into residencies, they are people who went to library school and got a library school degree, but they do not feel that they have the skill set in order to compete with other people who are trying to get academic librarian jobs. So residencies are specifically for entry-level professionals, people who typically they will not accept you in a residency if you have more than 3 years of experience. But usually when they hire you for a residency, you have no professional experience. You did not have you might have had a job in a library, but it wasn't a quote unquote librarian job. It was usually a paraprofessional job or a technician job or something like that. Okay. So yeah, what these residencies do, they are twofold in their goal. The first thing that these residencies are trying to do is they're trying to actually retain people as academic librarians. Okay, so people go to library school pretty often and get the degree, and then they might originally want to be academic librarians, but then what might end up happening is the academic library jobs they're just hard to get. They are competitive. They're only opening up like 2 or 3 times a year at some places because people are sometimes trying to hire in the summer if they're on a college campus, or they're trying to hire hold on a second. So they may be trying to, so yes, I apologize for that. They might be trying to hire during the summer if they're on a college campus. A lot of times on college campuses, the summers are generally slower, so that gives people more time to hire something. Or they might be trying to hire during the winter break, and therefore, trying to get somebody in January before the spring semester starts and that sort of thing. So academic libraries, a lot of times, they can be hiring throughout the year, but a lot of times are also really trying to hire during the summer, or really trying to hire during some of the off season where there's not as much going on. Okay. So then what happens is a lot of times when people aren't catching the openings for academic library jobs, they'll see the public library jobs opening and they get filled pretty quickly, and there's a lot of turnover and rotation. And so people end up at public library jobs, even though they originally intended to be academic librarians, and then they may stay in those public library jobs. So these academic library residencies, one thing that they do is they allow the field of librarianship to kind of retain academic librarians, get some people in on entry level skills, and give them enough skills that they're able to compete for their next job. And then they will be able to compete with other academic librarians after they've completed a residency. They can compete with other academic librarians. They'll have similar skill sets because they learn those skills during the residencies, and then they can compete, and then hopefully they'll be retained and get these academic librarian jobs and that sort of thing. Okay. And then another goal that academic libraries tend to have with their residency programs is they are trying to a lot of times get temporary employees in, because there are ways that you can leverage temporary employees that you can't leverage your permanent employees the same way, or your full-time permanent employees the same way. So with temporary employees, a lot of times you can give them special projects or capstones to finish, and that's what you'll see in a lot of residencies. Is a lot of times the residents in a residency have to complete some sort of capstone or some sort of project or something like that. And a lot of times these will be things that the library has needed for a while, but they have not had the staffing power to put somebody in that place. But the residency gives them an opportunity to do that. And also, when you have a position that is a temporary line, like you have a line position, a line item for a position, but the position is a temporary position and it rotates people in every 2 or 3 years, which is what residencies do. They tend to rotate people in every 2 to 3 years. If you're rotating people every 2 to 3 years into the library, that does infuse you with a lot of new ideas, a lot of new talent, a lot of new energy, and people who have not been there's something called institutional inertia, which will start to build up when people have been there for a long time and they're set in their ways and that sort of thing. So bringing in new people with new ideas and new energy and a different way of looking at things, it can always just kind of freshen the lifeblood that's going through your library, okay? So it's never a bad idea to do that. Now, I will say that not every library is fit to host a residency. So I'm going to get you all started as far as telling you what a residency is, and in addition to telling you what a residency is, I will be telling you how to find them, what the benefits are, so forth and so on. But if you're interested in this sort of thing, it'll be up to you to figure out which residency would be right for you, where to go, whether or not you'd even be eligible for the residency. Some residencies are, but not all, some residencies are actually diversity residencies. Mine was a diversity residency, and so you had to be a person of color to get those generally, because what diversity residencies are trying to do is they're trying to fix diversity issues in the field. So the field does have underrepresentation issues for people of color. I'm Black. Black people make up about 13 to 14% of the U.S. population, but we only make up 6% of the United States the librarian workforce in this country. Asians and Latin people, Hispanic people are also underrepresented in this field, and Native Americans or indigenous people, they are underrepresented as well, but the underrepresentation for that demographic is not as strong and as steep as the underrepresentation for Black, Latina, and Asian population. So if you're white, you might not be eligible for a diversity residency position, but that doesn't mean that there are not positions, residency positions that you would be eligible for, as long as they don't have the diversity component attached, or they might look at diversity in other ways, for instance, being neurodivergent, or being disabled, or being LGBTQ+, okay? So those other things at times do play a role and can make you eligible for a residency program. But with that said, let's talk a little bit about what the benefits of a residency program can be. Now, I'm going to put some links in the announcement. I'm going to have 3 or maybe 4 links in the announcement. It looks like 3 links in the announcement. And these links are going to be links that give you some information about residency programs. Now, again, residency programs, they are professionals. That's one thing that I want you all to know right off the bat. Residency programs are professional level programs. So after you complete a residency, a lot of times, well, let's put it this way. A lot of times library jobs do say 1 to 3 years of experience, professional experience required, okay? A residency program will never have that. If a residency program is asking for 1 to 3 years of professional experience, that is not an entry-level job, and they should not be calling themselves a residency program, because residencies are, by definition in our field, they are entry-level jobs that you can get with no experience, and they are professional-level jobs. Typically, a residency program will last 1 to 3 years. Mine was 2 years, but again, 1 to 3 years is typical. 1 year is not enough. So if you find a residency program that only lasts for 1 year, I would recommend that, unless you already have a lot of experience as a paraprofessional, but and you just want that experience as a professional to have it on your CV for when you go up for a full-time permanent professional position, then, you know, these residencies, if they give you that 1 to 3 years of professional experience, then you can record that and say, hey, I got that 1 to 3 years. I got that through this residency, okay? Again, residency programs are generally hosted at colleges. There are a few exceptions, OCLC, National Library of Medicine, and a few others. But the ones that are hosted at academic libraries, a lot of times they are at Research One institutions, and a lot of times they are at libraries with larger faculties and staffs. So that's a good thing as well, because a lot of times what the residency will do is the resident librarian will actually rotate between different departments. So the way my residency worked way back in 2008, not all of them work like this, but a lot of them do, is mine was 2 years, and what happened was the first year, I rotated between 3 departments, and then the second year I went full-time in one of those departments to get in-depth experience in that particular department. So for me, my first year, I spent the first 4 months in reference, then I spent 4 months in cataloging and tech services, then I spent 4 months in archives, okay? And then in the second year, I was in the cataloging department full time, and I was also still working the public services desk. However, even though I wanted to be a cataloger coming out of my library, my diversity residency program, sorry. Even though I wanted to be a cataloger coming out of that, my boss just said straight up, he does not have the attention to detail required for cataloging, so he needs to do something else. And so then I went into public services, but I did just fine, and then went into teaching after that. But so that's what the residencies do, and that's how they get you that experience. A lot of them will rotate you 3 or 4 different departments your first year, and then they'll have you work in a particular department full time your second year. However, there are some residencies that will just have you in one department the entire time, and a lot of times it will be the public services department. So be aware of that. When you are applying for residencies, you want to find out how the residency is structured, among other things, so that you can go in again with the full armor of knowledge to know whether or not this residency is the one that is going to likely teach you what you want to learn in your first stop. Okay. So first of all, as far as pros and cons, well, let me first just give myself a little plug here. So I've written 2 major pieces on residencies before. One was my dissertation, and I'm going to link that up. My dissertation can be downloaded for free. So if you want to read up about residency programs in my dissertation form, this is actually solving a research problem. So it's not going to give you that really user-friendly overview. This is academic writing, and it looks like academic writing when you start to read it. So it's not the easiest thing to read, but this will give you some insight on some of the issues and problems that go on in residency programs. Mine was specific to diversity residencies, but some of these issues still go on in other types of residency programs. I also co-wrote this book, as you see my name right there, with 3 other authors, and this was J.L. Colbert, Lorelei Rutledge, and Anastasia Shu. We were doing this book here, and this is Developing a Residency Program, a Practical Guide for Librarians. And so I do want to just go over really quickly. I'm not requiring you to buy this book, don't worry about that, but I do want to just kind of go over what some of the benefits are for the resident, meaning you, if you decide to go into a residency program. And again, this isn't specific to diversity residencies, so anyone can take note of what I'm saying here. Give me one little pause. All right, so chapter 2 of this book, and I wrote chapter 2 of this book here. Chapter 2, which is Why Should My Library Consider Hosting a Residency Program? I talk about the benefits to the library. I talk about benefits to the profession. I talk about the benefits to the residency coordinator. If you're interested in that, interlibrary loan this book and read it. But for right now, just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go over those benefits, but I am going to go over the benefits to the resident, and that would be you if you decide that your first job at a library school that you want is going to be a not a diversity residency necessarily, but a residency. So benefits for the resident. First of all, a first professional librarian job, and that is nothing to sneeze at. So I have known a lot, and I do mean a lot of people who actually got the library science degree, this master's in library science, but they never got a professional librarian job. They stayed as professional paraprofessionals or technicians, or else they just left the field entirely. They were not able to compete to get that first librarian job with librarian rank, and because they were never able to compete to get that job, they just stay in the technician ranks forever and ever and ever for the entirety of their career. If you do not want that to be you, then residencies might be something that you want to look at, because again, a lot of times those people who end up just being like paraprofessionals or technicians for their entire careers, a lot of times they are applying for professional librarian jobs, but they are applying for those jobs that require experience, and they're going up against people who have a lot of experience. They're losing to those people who have a lot of experience, and then they just stay in the paraprofessional ranks. But if you start out with a residency, you will not have to compete with people who have professional experience, and therefore you may have a better chance of getting this job, and that may be therefore getting you your first librarian ranked job, which will get you to other librarian ranked jobs, permanent ones, a lot quicker and a lot easier. Okay, so that's one of the benefits, is getting that first librarian ranked job. Once you get that first one, it's easy to stay getting librarian ranked jobs, but you got to get that first one. That's the big deal. A second key point is enhancing your job prospects. So this goes kind of along with the first point. So when you are applying for these librarian jobs, a lot of times what's going on is you are competing with people who have a lot more experience than you. And so something needs to happen in order for you to be able to compete with people who have more experience than you. And a lot of times what happens is, if you've had a residency, then you're getting basically a crash course in obtaining a lot of practical skills that you need And once you have those practical skills and have made yourself a little more marketable, then you have enhanced job prospects and you're more competitive. And that will give you the opportunity to compete with more people for academic librarian jobs. And it will make it easier for you to get your first. Okay. So enhanced job prospects will not get you first, but get more librarian jobs after your residency. Okay. Because now the people that you're competing with, you have a similar skill set to what they have due to your residency. All right, filling potential knowledge and skill gaps. That is a big one. One thing that I like to tell people, and they don't necessarily always like to hear this, but I like to tell people this anyway, is that education is not job training. Again, education is not job training. So a lot of people think that they should be able to go to library school and then be able to work in any library doing anything after library school. And that's just not what it is. And that's not what it is with a lot of these professional degrees. Okay. I do try to teach practical skills in a lot of my classes, including reference and including the business librarian job. The business librarian class, but the truth of the matter is nothing is a substitute for real on-the-job experience. And so filling those potential knowledge and skills gaps, that is something that a residency will prepare you to do. Another thing that a residency will prepare you to do is discover your professional interests. So that's what it did for me. Me personally, I'll share a personal anecdote really quickly. I am not a people person. I used to work in retail and I hated it. And so I thought that I was not going to be somebody who was built for public services within libraries. However, and I hear this from people all the time, even though they're not people, so to speak, when you're doing library reference, a lot of times the people, almost all the time, the people who come to you are people who really, really want your assistance and they're nice about it. And so people who are not people still end up doing very well in public services in libraries because they are getting to help people almost 100% of the time. And that's what they wish to do if they have to interact with people at all. They would prefer it to be a pleasant experience where they're helping people. And that is what goes on in reference work in the academic library. Okay. And so, what happened for me was I thought that I wanted to be a cataloger because I wanted to avoid people, but then I had to do reference work as part of my residency. Turned out that I liked it okay. And so after my residency job, all of my jobs have been public services. And had I not been in a residency, I don't know if that would have been the case. All right. So developing and discovering your professional interests. There are a lot of people who go through residencies and then after they're done with their residency, they want to do something totally different from what they thought they wanted to do before they started their residency. Unique opportunities to build a professional network early. That is something that worked wonders for me. I cannot tell you all enough that I would not be here where I am right now if it weren't for getting the opportunity, not in a residency, but for me personally, it was a scholarship initiative and I was able to go to a conference due to my scholarship initiative. But for people who don't have it like that, your residency, a lot of times resident librarians have a higher travel budget than other librarians because what they're trying to do is get them kind of shipped out scenes so that people are like, oh yeah, this is that resident. I met them at a conference. Yeah, they were well funded and they went to these conferences and I met them at these conferences and this is a very promising candidate. I like them. Okay. So what you see there is an example of people building their professional network early. And that is what I recommend you all do. I tell people, start building your professional network right now, like while you're in library school, because I did not get where I am because I'm smart. I did not get where I am because I'm handsome. I got where I am because I networked, and I networked early. When I was 23 years old at a conference, I was networking full stop and not shy about it. And I did set myself apart from some of the other people in the scholarship initiative who weren't as proactive in talking to people. So that's another thing I want you all to realize. It is very helpful to build your professional network early, and the residency can do that because you will be building a network with your coworkers at the library. You'll probably also be going to like state association workshops and that sort of thing, networking with people there, and then you'll be going to conferences and networking with people there. Okay. And then finally, the last thing that I have as in my book here, the last thing that I have as a benefit to the resident is that you get to learn about the nuances of higher education. Now, I am trying to teach you all a lot about that here in this class, but there's certainly a lot more to learn. And being in a residency program can teach you those things, all right? So those are the benefits from my book. And now we're going to look at a few web pages to see if we can find some further benefits. Give me one moment. All right, so I've already gone over what I identified as benefits for residency programs. Now we're going to talk about this piece, and I'm going to link this piece in the announcement. And you'll get to see from this piece what they are listing as, and they, in this case, would be Beth Canzaneri. Beth Canzaneri. I hope I am pronouncing that right. I hate pronouncing people's names wrong. But Beth is also going to tell us some of the benefits and pros and cons about these residency programs, which again last typically from 1 to 3 years. Okay. So what are some of the pros and cons that Beth has identified? First of all, you get a true immersion into academic librarianship. That is very, very true. You will, once you're in a residency program, you're just kind of in there. So you're learning everything. Don't get me wrong. They got you. They got you. I don't want to make it sound like you're just thrown in there and just thrown to the sharks. They guide you, and the librarians do a very good job, typically, of mentoring their residents, okay? But yes, you are here to be mentored in a residency program, and you will get that full immersion. You will be right there. There is no educational buffer. You are just there. You will work that reference desk. You will catalog some books. You will work circulation if that's part of it, and so forth and so on. And you will see how all of these things work. And that does help you determine which of those areas you probably want to go into after you finish your residency. It offers valuable mentor relationships. That is also very, very true. And mentoring is something that I will talk about in a different check-in video later in the course. I do talk about mentoring in academic libraries. But yes, you do, a lot of times you will be assigned a mentor in a residency program, so that goes a long way. Provides funding for professional development. I've said that already. But yes, a lot of times you will have additional funding more than your co-workers with permanent jobs. You will have additional funding for travel and for workshops and that sort of thing. If you are a resident, please take advantage of that, because that's, again, how you enhance your skill set and how you network. Allows time for research and writing projects. I actually have some disagreements with that, so I'm going to skip over that one. It can offer little in the way of structure. Okay, so that is a con. Yes, it can offer little in the way of structure. A lot of times you will hear resident librarians complaining about like excessive amounts of idle time. And that's something that I wrote about in my dissertation, was that yes, there's too much idle time in a lot of these residency programs, and these people do not necessarily know what they should be doing with their idle time. I know what to do with my idle time, but I have been in this field since 2006, okay? If you don't know what to do with your idle time, then you're just sitting there. So you need some guidance, and that is something that a lot of times these residency programs will not offer enough guidance on what to do with your idle time. A lot of times, and if you find yourself in one of these positions, you can always email me even after you graduate from the program. But one thing that I'm going to say is one thing that you want to do with your idle time is practice on the databases, okay? All right. It delays the start of a tenure track position. That can be good or bad. I would say that if you don't have a lot of publishing experience, then it's a good thing if your tenure track position is delayed a little bit, so you can actually develop a research agenda while you are in the residency program, and then just continue the research agenda while you are in a tenure track position that is requiring you to publish or perish. All right. And they do have an expiration date. I don't know that that is necessarily a con either. So, yeah, they have an expiration date, and that means you won't be there forever unless they decide to. There are some residency programs where the resident was hired full-time afterwards, and some of them even have that goal. Mine did not. And that's something that is fair to ask, as long as you ask it diplomatically while you are applying for the job, okay? But yes, they do have an end date or an expiration date, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because that way you just kind of, you know what's coming. So I knew that my residency was going to be 2 years long. And so 6 months, when I was 18 months in, I only had 6 months to go. That's when I started applying for jobs, and I did not have a break in employment. I did end up in a public library after my residency, so that wasn't really the goal. But I will say that, yes, I didn't have a break in employment as soon as my residency was over because I started applying for jobs 6 months in advance. I was able to just transition right into that public library job, and I went from there, okay? So those are pros and cons, and the residency interest group is another thing that I am going to link in the announcement. This is the residency interest group. Just as an overview about us, just to show you who these people are, and you'll see all these minutes and stuff there about us. Give me that. What is the interest group? Who we are. This will give you a little bit more information about residencies and that sort of thing. People, programs, former residencies, former residents. You'll see these are, I think, current residents. Yeah, and there are more than these. These are pretty much just the ones that they are aware of and have had the time to add, but there are going to be more. There are more residents serving than this right now. I can assure you of that. And then there is this page of former residents, and then you'll find Dr. Jace on this page of former residents. Way back a long time ago, Jace Austin, University of North Carolina at Greensboro from 2008 to 2010. So that was me. But yes, this page that I'm going to link to, it will give you information about what residencies are, what the residency interest group is, and you're going to want to be aware of that because you can network with these people. Again, I told you that networking is the name of the game, and I'm very serious about that. Networking is very important in libraries, and you need to be doing it constantly. Research and publications. This is some good stuff to kind of, and the residency toolkit. This is a diversity residency toolkit, so it's specifically for the residencies that do have that diversity component, but you still might be able to get some useful information out of that. All right. Job Center, this is always good. So if you're looking for residencies, one thing that you may want to actually do though is you can always just go to Indeed or Monster or something like that and put in, this may show some things. Okay. Never mind. Oh, because of that. No. Sorry about that, because I know that made the video longer. But that's not working either. I apologize for that, but yes, there you can use this as a job center. You can also, you'll see plenty of jobs coming on. You'll see them through your state association job line. You'll see them on listservs and that sort of thing. And if I were not experiencing brain fog right now, I'd be able to show you what to do as far as looking for residency jobs from Indeed. But you will be connected to these through the Job Center or the Residency Interest Group, as well as other resources. And then finally, again, if you want to download my dissertation, you can. Again, this is academic writing, so it's not going to give you a very good overview. It's going to go right into problems and research and that sort of thing, okay? But again, this is something that you can read if you're, trying to learn a little bit more about what not diversity residents, if you're trying to learn a little bit more about what resident librarians do and whether or not that will be a useful career for you. Well, not career, but a useful option, I should say, for you after you finish this program. All right, let's not take this to 35 minutes. I am Dr. Jace, and a residency program is a good idea if you don't know how to start the race. I will see you next week with another check-in video, but goodbye for now. Thank you.